Hello and welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Your headline to the Thames Valley this Friday evening. A father from Reading says his teenage son has been left shaken after two young people died at Bournemouth beach. His son pulled one girl from the water.
There was a young girl who was face down in the water. And then after that, he scooped her up. He shouted for help.
A restaurant owner in Oxford says the city's controversial low-traffic neighbourhood scheme has cost him his business.
Also on the programme, more than football, how the beautiful game has changed the life of a warehouse worker. And
why shark and chips could be returning to a menu near you.
It's a bit like a squid, isn't it? You would want it.
Good evening. A father from Reading says his son has been left shaken and upset after trying to rescue a young girl from the sea at Bournemouth beach.
Rob Creech said his son Mackenzie rushed into the water to bring the girl back to shore before paramedics arrived and started CPR. Well, this was the beach on Wednesday when emergency services arrived shortly after 4:30. There were two air ambulances, the Coast Guard helicopter, fire and rescue, the ambulance service and police.
A 12-year-old girl from Buckinghamshire and a 17-year-old boy were taken to hospital where they later died. 8 others were rescued. Wesley Smith has our exclusive report.
Nothing could have prepared 18-year-old Mackenzie Creech for what he would witness on the beach in Bournemouth. He'd gone down from Tilehurst in Reading for a day out with friends when tragedy struck. His father Rob takes up the story as Mackenzie doesn't feel ready to relive the events of the day on camera.
Rob, firstly, how's your son doing?
He's fine. He's obviously very upset with the events. I think it's going to take some time. I mean, he was obviously very upset with the events of the day and quite shaken. But he's one of those people that it will take time for it to sink in.
So, what did he tell you about exactly what happened?
They were in the sea. Just swimming about by the pier, and then all of a sudden there was a big commotion on top of the pier. Lots of people shouting and screaming that there was a problem on the other side. My son then decided to swim across to the other side of the pier to see what all the commotion was, and when he got there, there was a young girl who was face down in the water. And then after that he scooped her up. Shouted. By this time, the emergency services were on the beach. He shouted for help, for them to help him. He managed to get her ashore, and then he put her down on the beach. And then the emergency services took over.
Did Mackenzie have any lifesaver training?
No, none at all. He just purely went on instinct.
What are your thoughts for the families involved?
I'm absolutely, obviously gutted for them. It's nobody should lose a child, and whatever age that is, and it's just heartbreaking, and I just cannot think, what they're going through. It's just, unbelievable.
How proud are you of your son?
I'm immensely proud. Words cannot describe it. It's what he did was amazing, and I still look at him as a child. He's still really, really young. Like I said, the only thing that is really upsetting for him was that he wasn't able to save the young girl. He just wishes that he could have got there that much earlier to be able to maybe save her.
Rob says Mackenzie is still processing events and doesn't want to make a big fuss, but surely he knows his dad and the rest of the family are there to support him through this most difficult of times all round. Wesley Smith, ITV News.
What a brave thing to do. Well, you can find more on that story and others, of course, on our website. The address, as ever, at itv.com/Meridian.
In other news, a prisoner who tried to kill an officer at HMP Bullingdon near Bicester has been sentenced to a further 14 years behind bars. Kevin Jones, who was 41, pounced on a member of staff as he bore a grudge against and tried to stab him with a sharpened plastic knife. He was subsequently restrained on the floor by officers. The officer did not suffer physical injuries but has struggled mentally.
Firefighters remain at the scene of a large heath fire in Hampshire which broke out yesterday afternoon. Crews were called to the Aldershot area where a fire had broken out across 10 hectares of heathland and gorse. The fire service says 8 appliances as well as additional specialist vehicles were involved at the height of the fire. There are warnings for people to take care over the weekend when they're out and about.
Rail passengers are being warned of more disruption amid strike action by the RMT and ASLEF unions today and tomorrow. There has been a significantly reduced service on South Western, Chiltern and Great Western today, and passengers are being urged to check before they travel. The RMT says it is ready to settle and to get back to normal.
We've just got to have a settlement to this dispute and we can get back to running them. We've got that on London Transport. The railways are operating perfectly well in Scotland and Wales, and they're operating well in London. So if we can get a settlement, we can get the railways back on track, to use a pun. But it's the government that's stopping that from happening. And if they change their position, we can get back to normal and running the railway for the people.
And a government spokesperson has told us the government has facilitated a fair and reasonable pay offer. Now, union leaders must do the right thing and put this to their members.
Next, the father of Hollywood actor Florence Pugh says one of his Oxford restaurants has been repossessed as customers have been driven away by the controversial low-traffic neighbourhood schemes.
Clinton Pugh says Café Tarifa closed as he struggled to get diners through the door and blames the council for its collapse. He says he shouldn't have to call on his famous daughter to save his restaurant businesses. Penny Sylvester has our story.
Clinton Pugh has been running cafes and bars in East Oxford for years, but he says the council's low-traffic neighbourhood scheme around the Cowley Road is putting him out of business.
If the customers can't get here, or if they can't park, or they take too long to come from Headington, it's taking over an hour to come down the hill, people just aren't going to come.
Low-traffic neighbourhoods are areas where roadblocks have been put up in side streets to stop motorists taking shortcuts through residential areas.
Some people have clearly been against the scheme right from the start and still are. Equally, I get a very great many communications from people who say it has transformed their lives for the better.
The bollards have been vandalised, road signs regularly ignored, and the scheme has pitted neighbour against neighbour. Those in favour say the streets are safer for cyclists and pedestrians and the air is cleaner around their homes. Opponents say the road closures are forcing drivers onto already congested roads and the diversions are killing trade. The restaurant owner's connection to his Oscar-nominated daughter Florence has drawn in customers to Café Coco.
She's helped me in the past, bless her. You know, she's a good girl. All my kids have helped me. They've all worked in this restaurant. But I think it's very unfair. I mean, you know, where does she stop? What, she bails me out, bails the rest of the business out on the Cowley Road? Come on, this is just not fair. It's not, I shouldn't have to call on my daughter to save my businesses.
The council spoke to over 300 individuals and businesses and residents and companies during 2022 in the period before this particular LTN scheme went in. And of course the scheme itself is in under an experimental traffic regulation order, which is itself a real-time consultation process.
A decision about whether to make the low-traffic neighbourhoods a permanent feature will be made later this year. Penny Sylvester, ITV News, Oxford.
The school in Andover has created 10 additional school places for children with special educational needs and disabilities following an extension. Icknield School has created 2 new specialist classrooms, a physiotherapy room and other facilities including a new workspace for staff. There's also a new outdoor teaching area.
People in West Berkshire who haven't had their first or second dose of the COVID vaccine can do so before the end of the month. The council is asking people to check their eligibility and book now to make sure they get both jabs before the 30th of June. People will need to wait several weeks between the doses.
Charity fundraiser from the Thames Valley has been praised by the Oxford Children's Hospital for raising more than £100,000. Andrew Baker set up his charity Play to Give 21 years ago. Andrew, who's from Didcot, began raising money aged 14, or rather 14 years old he was at the time, as a way to say thank you to the medical teams who saved his life at birth and during his brain surgery at the age of 12. As well as £100,000 raised for the Children's Hospital, Andrew also raises funds for the Helen and Douglas House Hospice and the brain injuries charity Headway Oxfordshire.
Well done to Andrew. Well, you're watching ITV News Meridian here in the Thames Valley. Still to come.
Why one athlete is pushing himself to the limit in celebration of his brother's life.
And we've certainly had lots of this sort of sky over the last couple of weeks. And if you like that sort of thing, I've got good news. There's more to come. Join me later for the full forecast.
Look forward to that, Pip. And remember, you can find more news from right across the Thames Valley by heading to our website. All you have to do is go to itv.com/Meridian. You can give us a call. Our number is 0808 1010 095. And you can follow us on our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram pages.
In other news, a Sussex police officer has pleaded not guilty to charges of attempted rape and sexual assault. Daniel Julian from Pulborough appeared at Lewis Crown Court this morning. The offences are alleged to have taken place 2 years ago. He's been suspended and a trial date's been set for next April.
A man from Waterlooville has been ordered to pay more than £6,000 for fly tipping. Nikki Vincent hired a van to dump black bags filled with insulation into 2 skip bank containers. Both were filled to capacity and a fridge was also left at the Parkwood Centre in Waterlooville.
An investigation into a plane crash in Sussex found relevant emergency checklists weren't carried out. 2 men on board the light aircraft were injured when it came down near Shoreham Airfield last year. It was found there was enough fuel, but one of the tanks had run dry. The plane struck the hillside heavily, causing serious injuries to both people on board.
2 people have been arrested in connection with the theft of a baby donkey from a farm in Hook. Moon was taken from Miller's Ark on the 15th of May, but was reunited with her owners after being found on Wednesday. A 17-year-old man and a 38-year-old man from High Wycombe in Buckinghamshire have both been released under investigation, while further inquiries take place.
Sussex man is in prison tonight, jailed for 22 weeks after stealing chocolate. Jordan Thompson, who's 48 and from Worthing, was caught stealing £116 worth of confectionery. He took 48 Twix bars, 48 Snickers, 24 Bounties and 24 Yorkies from the Co-op in New Broadway in Worthing. He was previously jailed for similar offences last year.
Now, wildlife campaigners say an environmental emergency has been created because of the extraction of peat from our peatlands.
Well, according to the Wildlife Trust, 31 million tonnes of CO2 could have been released into the atmosphere since the beginning of the 90s as a direct result of using peat in gardening and its use by professional growers of fruit, vegetables and plants.
Now, the government has announced that all peat products will be off the shelves by 2030. But is that soon enough? Here's Katie Ridley.
Our wetlands have been producing peat for thousands of years. These carbon-rich ecosystems are seen as a valuable resource. But when disturbed and dug up, they can do real harm to the environment. Since the 1990s, campaigners have been calling for peat extraction to be banned in the UK. At Hamfair Nature Reserve, they are doing all they can to protect their peat bogs.
What can actually be done is the restoration and protection of sites like this. This site alone that has been restored to what you can see behind me over the last 20 years for us re-wetting it has locked up something like 65,000 tonnes of carbon in that 20-year period. So massive biodiversity gain, but also a huge gain for the climate.
Traditionally, peat has been dug up from sites like this and used in horticulture. TV gardener Ara Anderson told us why it's so popular.
Commercial growers in particular really like to use it because especially when they're propagating, when the plants are very young, they can get a consistency enabling the nutrients and the water to be a good stable level.
There is no issue with banning peat, but it's about the timing of that, because to get good quality, sustainable alternatives is very complicated, and actually ensuring that they're in a sufficient volume is the big problem at the moment. And if you suddenly reduce the amount of plants in Britain by millions and millions, that's actually an environmental disaster as well.
An environmental disaster the government told ITV News is being addressed in this statement. We believe that a ban in the amateur sector for 2024, which accounts for 70% of use, is still the right approach. Furthermore, we feel that a phased approach for the professional sector, with some exemptions from 2026 and a full ban from 2030, is achievable. It'll be a long time yet before we see marshes like these left undisturbed. Katie Ridley, ITV News.
It's 6:15 and the ITV Evening News continues with the national and international news at 6:30. Here's Geraint Vincent.
Coming up on the programme, Philip Schofield lays bare the impact of the past week. The former presenter says he's lost everything since he quit the show. But what next for ITV? A life sentence for the teenage Islamic State fanatic charged with plotting acts of terrorism. Boris Johnson tells the COVID inquiry that if it was up to him, he'd let them have all his WhatsApp messages. And it's an all-Manchester affair on Saturday as City take on United for the FA Cup. So what's at stake for both teams? Join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Well, let's stay on the sporting theme. Sarah joins us in the studio. Sarah, good evening.
Thank you, Matt. Well, to start tonight, many of us are aware of the benefits of sport to our mental health. But for many individuals who grew up playing football, the question as adults is where to play and who with. Well, a scheme run by the NHS and Brighton and Hove Albion has helped players come together and do just that, particularly helping men struggling with isolation after the pandemic. Andy Dickinson reports.
Sport is not just about fitness or skill. At its best, it offers a safe space, a chance to connect, exercising not just muscles but social skills. A team supporting each other, even through the darkest times.
The real thing that hit me with my mental health was lockdown. I've sort of secretly suffered with depression for a very long time, and I've never really sort of faced up to it or sort of engaged with it. And then football's always been an outlet that I've wanted to do, but because I've had like crippling anxiety, I haven't wanted to do it. It has been life-changing, and I don't use that term loosely. It really has.
Matt has now become an unofficial ambassador of this scheme, invited to meet one of his footballing heroes, Liverpool's Jordan Henderson, for a photo shoot celebrating it and so many other NHS charities.
Matt just spoke openly downstairs about what he was going through and how the NHS charities together helped him, and just hearing it from Matt was incredible really, and I'm sure there's plenty of other people that it's helped.
Suicide is the leading cause of death for middle-aged men in the UK, and during COVID we've seen a real increase in not just mental health problems for men actually, but mental health problems within the whole community, exacerbated by things like cost of living crisis more recently. And so what we were wanting to do was use the power of football to reach men who might be struggling before they needed more formal support, to enable them to build connections and also look out for their friends and look out for each other.
It's a kickabout, it's fun. Yes, of course it can get a little bit competitive, but sometimes we don't even count the score. It is just seeing guys being active, getting out there and having conversations, being aware of your mental health and mental well-being. It is the first step. When guys open up and just talk about having a tough week, whether that's at work or with the kids, it really helps to share, and I've seen that firsthand and the difference that it makes.
With more than 15 regular games already serving 250 players set up in just the last year, the goal now is to expand even further, getting men of all abilities and ages back in the game. Andy Dickinson, ITV News, Lancing.
Yeah, great scheme. Meanwhile, Brighton and Hove Albion player Katie Robinson has spoken of her pride having been named in the England squad for the World Cup. The 20-year-old midfielder is the youngest member of the group heading to Australia, having been picked by boss Serena Wiegmann, who announced her squad this week.
Obviously I'm young and I just want to take it all in and, get any opportunities that I can and work really hard.
Swimmers have taken the plunge for the first time at a new £4 million Olympic-sized pool on Brighton's seafront. Sea Lanes is the UK's first national open water swimming centre, a stepping stone to swimming in the sea, rivers and lakes. Star guest at the opening was three-time Olympic swimmer Kerry-Anne Payne.
It's giving people the opportunity to enjoy swimming in the outdoors, but in a safer kind of way to start with before they maybe take their step out into the sea or lakes or rivers, whatever it might be. But to have an Olympic-sized swimming pool in Brighton is just incredible.
For a lot of people, it's quite a step to go from either swimming in an indoor pool or not swimming at all and getting into the sea. And we thought the natural way of doing this was to have a halfway house of having a heated but open-air pool close to the sea.
And triathletes from across the country will head to Oxfordshire this weekend for the annual Blenheim Palace Triathlon, thought to be the only event of its kind to take place in the grounds of a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It offers varying levels of competition to suit all abilities. Among those taking part this year will be David Webborn, taking part in memory of his brother Johnny, who died shortly before his 25th birthday with malignant melanoma. The brothers had taken part in the event together, and David has now pledged to take part every year in celebration of his brother's life. He's raising money for the hospice that cared for him.
Sadly, he never got that opportunity to do it again, but I did. I completed it in 2014 with my other brother, and I've done it every year ever since, and it's been a really positive thing for me. Very positive in the immediate aftermath of losing my brother, and it was just really good for my own mental well-being.
We wish Dave the very best of luck, and of course to everyone taking part.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, scientists have discovered a new dinosaur, a big fish-eating one that roamed the south millions of years ago. Experts at Southampton University say it looked a bit like this, a member of the Spinosaurus family, which were as strong as a T-Rex.
Well, this one was a carnivore, and they've been examining a tooth found in the region. All indications are that the marshes of Sussex would have been teeming with them 125 million years ago.
They're fish eating, they have a long face that's superficially like a crocodile, and the teeth, when they were discovered in the early part of the 1900s, were thought to belong to crocodiles. We've now analysed this tooth with all kinds of different methods, statistical analysis, looking at little characters, and we've shown that actually the diversity of spinosaurs in the south of England is a lot greater than we ever thought it was before.
Exciting discovery, but I'm really shocked at the size of that tooth.
I was expecting bigger.
Yeah, I was expecting our expert to come in because I saw him when he came into the studio. I was going like holding it like this.
Yeah. But still impressive. Still impressive. Well, those dinosaurs may have been partial to some fish, and millions of years of evolution later, and it's still part of our national diet, really. Particularly with chips, of course, maybe some gravy, pickled egg, gherkin. I'm just thinking about my tea now, to be honest. But there is something new at the local chippy.
Yes, British-caught shark and chips will be making their way onto menus across the south after rising catches locally.
Well, stocks have replenished and could prove to be a much cheaper alternative than traditional favourites, including cod and haddock. It certainly tickled Nick Smith's taste buds.
Our fishing industry has had a turbulent time of late, getting to grips with new rules on exporting, along with spiralling costs in fuelling their vessels. But those whose livelihoods depend on what we catch in our waters have been handed a new lifeline. Like many things, our fishing industry isn't immune from rising inflation. In fact, in the last 2 years, the price of cod fillets has jumped from £9 a kilogram to £12. But there could be a cheaper solution within our own waters. For the first time in 13 years, our fishermen can catch spurdog again, putting British rock and chips firmly back on the menu. Spurdog is a small shark species which used to be a common alternative to traditional whitefish. And the fact it can be caught locally rather than imported means it can be valued at as little as £3 per kilo. Those overseeing fishing operations here tell me they've worked alongside scientists to monitor their numbers.
The fishing industry has worked on collecting a lot of data to really understand where's the distribution of the stock, how healthy is it, how much recovery is going on and what rate. It's in the fishing industry's best interest to make sure we manage this fishery sensibly and sustainably.
Lucas Lambroom is a fish and chip shop owner who's delighted he can put locally sourced rock and chips back on the menu.
It's quite meaty, full of flavour, packed full of flavour, quite soft yet quite meaty texture. And it's a traditional old school fish. It also means that we have access to local fish from local fishermen supporting local fisheries as well, which in the past we've had to import from abroad like Canada or America, but now we can buy fish from our shores.
Well, we asked people in Poole if they would give it a try.
I quite like different things, so I'd definitely try it.
I'm into fish, plaice, cod, haddock, but no. Not for me.
Doesn't appeal. It's a bit like a squid, isn't it? You wouldn't want it.
It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I eat anything. Any fish food, I love any fish food. So I'm going to actually eating sharks.
But the advice from environmental experts on fishing for spurdog is to proceed with caution due to its sensitive breeding cycle.
We need to be really cautious with the management of this species. It is a vulnerable species, and it is possible that opening the fishery too quickly could be too much too soon. Most spur dog reach maturity around 10 to 15 years, and they only reproduce every few years. Therefore, it can take decades for a species such as this to recover from overfishing.
While the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs says they will use the latest scientific advice and ensure appropriate management measures are in place so we are able to facilitate spur dogs' ongoing recovery, as this little native shark is brought back onto our plates once again. Nick Smith, ITV News.
I mean, Fish Friday, I get. Shark Friday?
No, I don't. I eat anything, as you know.
Well, that is
but I
true.
don't know whether I'd go out of my way to find it.
OK, well, let's ask Pip. She's here with the weather forecast. What's your go-to fish and chip shop meal?
Battered sausage.
OK.
But have you ever had a spam fritter? Because
I haven't had the pleasure.
If you see that on your fish and chip shop menu, I can highly recommend it. It's a Drew family favourite.
OK,
I'm actually going to make that a thing to do this weekend.
Are you really? Spam fritters all round.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the weather. It's been nice. Is it going to continue in the same vein?
Yeah, I'd say whatever you've had over the last week or so, you can
Spam
expect
fritters.
more of, and spam fritters, more of in the next week or so. And this is why. So the current setup has seen high pressure sat just to the north of us. It's not really going to move very far over the next few days. So staying dry, lots of sunshine, but I think we've all noticed that breeze, haven't we? And the reason we've noticed it is because it's quite a cool breeze. Wind's going in a clockwise direction around a high pressure. It's coming in from the northeast, and that at any time of year is quite a cool direction. Add to that it's funneling through that Dover Strait. So down in this part of the world, the winds get squeezed between the UK and mainland Europe. It means we get some pretty brisk winds along the south coast, and all in all, it's felt somewhat cooler than the temperatures may have suggested.
And Pip, we've had some clear skies, and that's good news for sky gaze, especially this weekend.
Yeah, that's right. So Saturday night we will have our June full moon. Now, each month's moon is given a nickname, and June's full moon is nicknamed the strawberry moon because it's that time of year when the strawberries are coming to ripe and they're ready for harvesting. So hopefully some clear skies Saturday night, hopefully some good glimpses of it, and maybe some pictures as well. Meridian weather at ITV.com. I'd love to see them.
And if we see it, easy to spot because it will be a bit pinky.
It's going to be round. No, in fact, nothing to do with the colour actually, but it will be round. Yeah, okay, and it will be a moon.
You heard it here first. It's going to be round.
Breaking news. Well, the time now. Here's Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
So it looks as though the dry, fine and settled weather will continue for a little while longer. Certainly through the next few days, lots of dry weather, plenty of warm sunshine, but of course that cooling breeze just taking the edge off of the temperatures. Out there at the moment then, we're looking at dry and clear conditions taking us through this evening. Overnight tonight, we will see a little bit of cloud drifting in on the northeasterly breeze, but not as much cloud as we've seen in recent nights. And as a result, temperatures for many spots getting into single figures, and some rural locations perhaps as low as 5 or 6 degrees by the end of the night. So tomorrow morning, a fresh start, but a bright start. Any early lingering clouds soon melting away in that June sunshine. And then into the afternoon, things looking pretty promising. Lots of lovely sunshine to be enjoyed. And after a sunnier start, temperatures probably getting a little higher than they have done today, peaking at 22, perhaps locally 23 degrees. High tide times for tomorrow then for Poole there around 9:30 in the morning and just after 9:30 in the evening. So a quiet end to the day tomorrow, and then it looks as though we'll have clear skies overnight into Sunday. Sunday itself starting on a nice sunny note, and it really sets the tone for the days that follow. Plenty of warm sunshine, a little cooler in the breeze.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello, summer. Piri sponsors ITV Pollen Count.
And of course, all of this is prime conditions for pollen to be on the move. Dry, fine, a bit of a breeze. And over the next few days, grass pollen levels are set to remain generally in the high category. Take care.
Well, we're all off to get our spam fritters. In just a moment, though, it's the ITV Evening News with Geraint Vincent.
Who knew? Spam fritters are nice and the moon is round. We've learnt a lot this evening. Have a great weekend.
Happy weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.